Hello, I'm Shazza and welcome to my channel Hooked on Books. Today I'm going to be playing Book Roulette, and if you don't know, that's a game in which I've got this roulette wheel, I spin it lands on a number and that indicates the shelf that I go to. I spin it again and that indicates the number of the book that I go to. By no means do I have like 35 shells. It's a case of I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And basically what happens is I'll land on the book and it's a decision of whether I choose to read/reread it or I get rid of it. Before we play this round of Book Roulette, last month we landed on this one, which is A General Theory of Oblivion, and I did indeed manage to read this one and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. A great literary fiction book that's translated from the Portuguese. It's set during the time in which the Angolan independence was coming about, and it's about this woman called Ludo who ends up bricking herself into her own apartment and doesn't leave for 28 years. So she ends up burning her furniture, she ends up taking down paintings of the wall, she has to burn books in order to stay alive, and it's really fascinating to get her internal world. Now we've got first and third person in this novel, which isn't something I've ever encountered before, I don't think. So you get the kind of outside world and then you get her internal world. I was more interested in her world rather than these sort of side characters, but that's definitely important within the novel as well. But I just love internal worlds. I just love getting inside someone's mind and seeing their thought processes. There's some really poetic aspects of this, pages such as this, which are actually poetry. There's just some parts that are really beautiful to read, and I think it's really the internal world aspects that really create that beauty. So you've got sort of sentences like, I realise I have transformed the entire apartment into a huge book. After burning the library, after I have died, all that remains will be my voice. In this house, all the walls have my mouth. There's also this part in which she's talking about having taken a painting down from the wall, and there's a nail in the wall and she goes to take it out just because it's like aesthetically wrong, and she ends up deciding not to because she's afraid that the walls are going to fall down or that the entire city's going to fall down. And I just love these little thoughts that she has, or the way that she thinks, and it's just very poetic, very thoughtful, very introspective, and yeah, it was just a terrific setting, terrific novel, very well written. Love to read more from this writer. Definitely high up there on my favourite books. So we have landed on the psychedelic renaissance, and I'm supposed to choose whether to read this or choose to get rid of it. This is one that I've already read, so it's a case of do I want to reread it or do I want to get rid of it? And I'm not going to do either of those things. I'm breaking my own rules. So we're going to play this game again in a second. If you want to kind of skip ahead to that, that's fine. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this one. This is one that I read in 2017, which is why I don't want to reread it, because it feels a little bit too soon. And my experience of reading this was when I finished it, I was more interested in reading more on the subject. So rather than go back and reread it, I want to find more stuff to do with this topic, and I have recently picked up this one, which is psychedelic medicine, so I am going to read this one anyway, so I don't feel like it would be of any benefit to read this. Basically, I'm interested in this because it's looking at psychedelics in a medical point of view. A lot of people over the years have obviously abused drugs a lot, and there's an impression of them that isn't very favourable, and I'm the kind of person that definitely took that view too, but I'm also smart enough to know that there is another side to that, and I definitely have issues on the laws that are on drugs and the whole war on drugs thing that's going on. because it's really limiting the research into these drugs that could actually be used in really positive ways. And this is a book that's written by this psychologist who's exploring the ideas behind using psychedelics in order to treat people with mental illness. So I'm a real sort of believer in using these drugs in a controlled medical setting in order to actually benefit people who are suffering. And it's really fascinating, and there are case studies in here that really show the benefits of it. But obviously the research is limited just because the laws on drugs gets in the way, which is a shame. But there's definitely more of this sort of thing coming out, which is really positive. And I do find it really fascinating. I just think that, like, you know, reading about drugs themselves is interesting, reading about mental health is interesting, and I've got both of those subjects in one. So, like I said, I don't want to reread this one. I want to read more on the subject. So instead of making this month's choice this one, we're going to play Book Roulette again. So let's go. So we have landed on this bad boy. So this is Charles Bukowski's The Pleasures of the Damned. This is a poetry collection. I've had it for a couple of years. There was a bookmark in it, so I have read a few of the poems, but not very many. Probably because it's absolutely huge. But this is definitely going to help me on my endeavour to read more poetry this year, so I'm pleased that we've landed on a poetry book. The reason I got this one is because a couple of my poems have been described as being quite similar to his. Charles Bukowski's one who splits people a lot. I think his poetry is a bit grim and definitely not for everyone, and I can definitely see a level of similarity in some of my poetry, although it's still very different. I think it's just certain poems there's a little bit of an alignment, but I'm interested to read this collection because it's massive and I think there's quite a range of different poems in here. We'll see how I get on with this one, and I will let you know next month when we play again. Anyway guys, thanks for watching and I will see you again soon.